Happy day, peace to all. Grand Rising. I'm Sister Jacqueline, and we're here to start our Tuesday morning session with the Elizabeth's group. We're recognizing the second day of Kwanzaa, and it's Kuji Kajalia, which is self-determination. And if anyone want to correct my saying of that, but I think I have that. We are so thankful and happy to be here this morning and to continue on our sharing with you and bringing peace and knowledge and information to everyone and lifting everyone up. So with that, we're going to start our program, and I believe our sister, oh my goodness, I just had a brain mail.
Right.
Deitra.
Yes. Well, Grand Rising, everyone. So good to be here, and I'm so glad you can join us. And normally we start our Tuesdays off with the African Goddess Rising Oracle reading. And so I'm going to share some things. Let me pick a card. We normally pick an Oracle card. And let's see, what I have here today is called Mame Koumba Bang. And I'm going to show you a picture, if you can see that. And what she says is speak up. She is the goddess of speaking up. And she's of Senegal. And she is from the Griot temple. And her element is water. Mame Koumba Bang protects the mouth of the Senegal River. When making an offering to her, you must not speak to anyone else coming or going. Sing for her, chant for her, call to her. Give Goddess Koumba your voice and she'll be happy. Mame Koumba's Bang guidance is speak up, speak out, speak on it. You have a right to be heard. The embodiment is you are betraying yourself by not speaking up. Your words have power. Own your voice. As the old saying goes, stand up for something or fall for anything. Being neutral is not an option. When you stand firmly in your truth, you have thoughts, opinions, beliefs, and convictions. What do you stand for? Tell someone today. And the goddess declaration is, I reclaim my voice. I speak out and speak up. There you go. Mame Koumba Bang.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out today that Mame is similar to saying mama. So I didn't know that. That's new to me. That's something I learned, and I'm speaking out. Letting you know. Right. What does that make anyone feel a certain way, or you get any thoughts regarding that reading today? About speaking out.
Well, what I know is that when we hold things in instead of saying what we need to say, and it's I want to say especially when it's a good thing, when you're speaking truth and when you're speaking from your heart. But even sometimes when it's may not be a good thing, but it is your truth.
Yes.
Holding it in can cause you to squash it down. Like sometimes you need to say things to people to get it out of you and get feelings out in a hopefully respectful way,
Yes, because I've heard, I mean, I've heard over the years that it can actually physically affect you, your throat, if it's not coming out, it can affect you.
And we could be being, I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings or anything like that, but inside you need to get it out. And there is a way to say it, you know, to get it out without being ugly, without being nasty, without cussing people out and things like that. So although I have to say that one time I got so mad at my husband because he was letting his brother use our credit, right?
Okay.
The way I found out was that was when, you know, you had a phone in the house, right? And I picked up the phone and it was his the credit people. They hadn't paid the bill and stuff, and I'm like, what bill? And I found out it was my brother-in-law's bill, and my husband hadn't told me or, you know, let me know that we were sharing our credit line, right? And then so we had the conversation and such, and then he still didn't take care of it. And he didn't, because he was saying, well, you know, he's a private guy. Well, I don't care about being private. This is hard, right? And then, and so the next time when they still called again, and then that's when I just had to, I had to say a bad word to get his attention, you know, and then everything started moving. So sometimes you got to be blunt with what you.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, let it out.
Get the point across. So I'm not telling y'all to do that. I'm just saying, you know. But yeah, to speak your truth.
Yes.
And yeah. You always want to leave people whole and complete.
Yes, exactly. You don't have to tear them down. No, it's not.
Yeah, you don't. And then some people, they hold it in so long that it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Exactly.
One little thing, you're like, where is that coming from? That's because,
that's true.
And it may not be even in regards to you. It could be where somebody else in their lives had done it so much, and you do one little thing, and it's like, you know, coming at you. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
And then you're taking it personal and the blah, 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 blah. And then the saga just goes on. But
going on and on. Yep, that's right.
It's true. And then we as a people, you know, we definitely have a lot of things that are not, not said. It's a lie. Things that we have done and accomplished, we don't get credit for it and all of that. So yeah, that's what I'm getting out of what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, that's true. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's good. Anyone else has anything they want to share? Or everybody just been talking and telling what they need to do, huh?
I was speaking to a friend of mine last night, and we were, you know, talking about speaking out, and he needed to speak to someone because he found out, because he went off on somebody, that something came up in him that he had forgotten about. So since the person that was responsible for that was not around, he wrote it down. He had two phones, so he was texting himself.
Okay.
So he would say how he felt, and then he would respond to how he felt, because he needed to get it out of him, since he found out that it was still in there. So that's like, you know, whatever way you got to do to speak up, whether you write it, whether you text it, whatever way, even if you can't say it. And like Queen, you know, Queen was saying, you know, you don't want to, you know, tear down somebody. You want to leave them empowered. And if you feel like you can't leave them empowered yet, then write it down and get it out until you can.
That's a good idea. That's a great idea. Yeah, we gotta let things out. Can't hold it in. Just can't hold it. Because
It becomes dis-ease when you hold it.
exactly, that's exactly what I think. Mhm. So some people are dealing with things because they're not saying stuff. They just holding everything, and they're having effects of that.
Well, Sister Deitra, we want to welcome everyone on today. We have some guests here along with, I'm sure, came along with our special guest, Malik. And I am super excited. I know Malik through his music, through his work, definitely. But also through his music. You know, my husband is a musician, and so we go and look at it, a lot of his band members as well, that we have either performed with them, or I've even done some training of braiding and stuff like that. So we welcome every single person today. Just being alive is fresh, is special and present. Being
That's true.
alive is just present, is special, you know, with
It
with
really is.
Deitra sharing that her father-in-law left Earth and went on to do his thing somewhere else.
Exactly, he did.
So we
Yeah.
really welcome every single one of you. At some time today, please show yourself physically, and feel free to join in and talk and share. And well, you know, everybody's so quiet. I'm just not used
I
to.
know, I'm not used to everybody being quiet. This is
Yeah.
new.
Bridget, greet us.
Good morning. Let me move back.
Grand Rising.
Grand Rising. Good morning. You know, we use so many times we use our voices to express
Yes.
when we're not happy with certain things, but also use our voices when you know you need to make a change.
That's true.
When you know you need to make a change in life, whatever that may be, that's also where we use our voices. Sometimes we allow fear to
Yeah.
hold us back from saying what we need to say in various situations, whether it's in your professional work life or it's in your personal life or whatever it may be. Using your voice to say, you need to make a change. You need to do what you need to do to take care of you. That is also another way that you honor her by using your voice.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That's right.
Ashe. Well, Deitra, I did pull up our, I went to the website, the official Kwanzaa website, and I'd like to read what it's saying here now that I know what day it really is.
Okay.
Chagalia, which is self-determination. I am going to share.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll read from there what we have here.
Okay, do you want me to read?
You
Or you want everybody to read themselves?
Oh, no, you can read it.
Okay. Okay. Kuji Chagalia, self-determination, to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves. That's so interesting that it goes with what our reading today. Let's see. Commitment and practice. This is the second principle of Nguzo Saba is Kuji Chagalia, self-determination. This too expresses itself as both commitment and practice. It demands that we as an African people define, defend, and develop ourselves instead of allowing or encouraging others to do this. It requires that we recover lost memory and once again shape our world in our own image and interests. And it is a call to recover and speak our own special cultural truth to the world and make our own unique contributions to the forward flow of human history. That is beautiful. Oh,
Mhm. Defining identity. Oh, that's long.
okay.
The first act of a free people is to shape its world in its own image and interest. And it is a statement about our conception of self and commitment to self-determination. Kawada, sorry if I missay that, and feel free to correct me, building on the teachings of Franz Fanon, states that each person must ask him or herself 3 basic questions. Who am I? Am I really who I am? And am I all I ought to be? These are questions of history and culture, not simply queries or questions of personal identity. More profoundly, they are questions of collective identity based and born out in historical and cultural practice, and the essential quality of that practice must be the quality of self-determination. To answer the question of who am I correctly, then, is to know and live one's history and practice one's culture. To answer the question of am I really who I am, is to have and employ a cultural criteria of authenticity, such as criteria of what is real and unreal, what is appearance and essence, and what is culturally rooted and foreign. And to answer the question of am I all I ought to be, is to self-consciously possess and use ethical and cultural standards which measure men, women, and children in terms of the quality of their thought and practice in the context of who they are and must become in both an African and human sense.
Oh, wow. That's a lot to digest and talk about, really.
Cultural groundedness. The principle of self-determination carries within it the assumption that we have both the right and responsibility to exist as a people and make our own unique contribution to the forward flow of human history. This principle shelters the assumption that as fathers and mothers of humanity and human civilization in the Nile Valley, we have no business playing the cultural children of the world. So it reminds us of the fact that African people introduced and developed some of the basic disciplines of human knowledge: astronomy, geometry, literature, math, medicine, ethics, advanced culture, architecture, etc. And it urges us as a people not to surrender our history and cultural identity to fit into the culture of another.
Amen.
Openness to exchange is a given, but it presupposes that one has kept enough of one's culture to engage in exchange rather than slavishly follow another's lead.
Queen, I can pick up from here.
Okay, go ahead.
The principle and practice of self-determination expresses and supports the concept and practice of Afrocentricity. Afrocentricity is a quality of thought and practice which is rooted in the cultural image and human interests of African people. To say that a perspective or approach is an African cultural image is to say it's rooted in an African value system and worldview, especially in the historical and cultural sense. And to say that an approach or perspective is in the human interests of African people is to say it is supportive of the just claims African people have and share with other humans. That is freedom from want, toil, and domination, and freedom to fully realize themselves in their human and African fullness.
Okay, we'll go on, we'll stop there.
Okay,
Okay.
well, that's wonderful to hear, you know, and especially when it talks about culture, because a lot of times if you ask people, what is your culture, or how would you describe it, they wouldn't really, you know, sometimes we don't know how to explain that. You know, how would I just explain my culture, you know?
Mhm.
So it's nice that Kwanzaa gives us something to work with, to me. I don't know.
Well,
Does anyone else have thoughts about what was read, or Kwanzaa in general? Come on, y'all. I know y'all can talk. Y'all too quiet now.
I know this, so.
We have
Well,
opinions about a lot of
let's
things.
bring Malik on and let him share. I've been waiting to just, you know, find out all that he's doing in this community, and be able to just hear from him and talk to him one-on-one.
Okay.
And all of you, you're free to talk and ask questions and share, especially all you who are here and really know Malik. Feel free to jump in about what you all are working on. Malik? Come back.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Grand Rising, greetings.
Abaragani, which is the official greeting during Kwanzaa. It's a Kiswahili phrase. It means, what's the news?
Mhm.
So on each day of Kwanzaa, the principle is being celebrated. So if I say to you, Habaragani, you're going to say today, you'll say Kujichagulia, because this is the second day of Kwanzaa. So Habaragani.
Kujichagulia, Baba.
Chagalia.
Chagalia.
Mama had ruined the house.
Yep.
Where did Sheila, where did we begin?
Just I'd really like to know about your project and just what you're doing and the process of it. You know, just feel free.
All right. So I have the sacred responsibility of leading the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, which is an organization, a grassroots organization we started in 2006. And in many ways, the work that we're doing grew out of earlier work in sort of an institute, an African-centered school that I was director of, and Mama Het was a parent at the school. Her lovely daughter, Isis, who's out here DJing now, was a student at the school. And so the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network is concerned about several things. We are concerned about the fact that for the most part, Black people in the United States do not produce, distribute, or sell the food that we consume, that we are dependent upon others for one of the most basic elements of human life. And so the practice of self-determination demands that we learn how to produce our own food, and that we learn how to put in place the systems that get that food from the grower to our dinner tables. And so the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network is about that work. So there's several things that we have done over the years since our founding in 2006. The first is that we wrote the City of Detroit's food security policy with input from others in the community, but we led the process, which led to the City of Detroit adopting this policy as the official food policy of the City of Detroit. Unfortunately, much of that has not really been followed or enacted, and it's a great policy that's sitting on people's shelves gathering dust for the most part. Mm-hmm. But the most significant part of that is that it called for the creation of the Detroit Food Policy Council. In many ways, we're following the lead of our brothers and sisters in Toronto, and I want to give a shout out to Sister Tina, who I see is on the call, calling us from Ontario. We're following the lead of Anan Lololi and others who are part of the Toronto Food Policy Council. And so again, the Detroit Food Policy called for the creation of the Detroit Food Policy Council, which continues to exist to this day. It's an independent body, although we were the main organization in creating it. It's an independent body with its own board and its own activities. The Detroit Food Policy Council was created to serve as an advisory body to the mayor and the legislative branch in city government, so that when decisions are made, they're looking at how it impacts Detroiters and food. The second thing that we've done that we're probably best known for is we operate one of Detroit's largest farms called D-Town Farm, where we grow 40 different fruits, vegetables, and herbs each year that we sell at farmers markets in Detroit and at the farm on Saturdays and Sundays between June and October. We also train people who come out and work with us at the farm. We train them how to do urban agriculture and why we're doing agriculture. We train them both on the techniques involved in growing, but also on the ideas that guide our work. At D-Town Farm, we, in addition to growing in the ground or growing row crops, we also grow in what's called hoop houses, or sometimes they're called passive solar greenhouses, where we can extend the growing season on both the front end and the back end. And a passive solar greenhouse or a hoop house is a structure that captures the radiant heat from the sun and makes it warmer inside the hoop house than it is outside. And so one of the elements that causes seeds to germinate is heat. As they go from the winter being cold and the soil starts to heat up, that signals to the seed that it's time to germinate. And so by making it kind of artificially warmer in the hoop house than it is outside, we can germinate seeds faster than we could outside, and we can get a head start on the growing season, and the same thing at the end of the growing season. We also raise bees, both for pollination of the crops and for production of honey. We do composting, taking what most people would consider to be waste and turning it into this very valuable black gold that we then use to fertilize our growing areas. We have a children's area and a public activities area where we have activities for the public, such as workshops or the Harvest Festival that we do at the end of the growing season each year. And there's lots and lots of other wonderful things that are happening at D-Town Farm. We also have, in addition to D-Town Farm and in addition to the policy work that we've done, we have a youth program, actually 2 youth programs. One is called the Food Warriors Youth Development Program. And I want to lift up my sister, Mama Hanifa Ajuman, who is the Education and Outreach Director of Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, one of its founding members, and who leads our youth program. So the Food Warriors Youth Development Program functions at 3 sites in the city of Detroit: at Barack Obama Leadership Academy on the east side of Detroit, on McDowell Preparatory Academy on the west side of Detroit, and at the Shrine of the Black Madonna on Linwood and Hogarth. And so in that program, we teach young people between the ages of 7 and 12 how to build and maintain raised bed gardens, how to grow those foods in the gardens, how to harvest it, how to prepare it in healthy ways. And everything that we do is rooted in an African-centered understanding. That is to say, as you just read the works by Maulana Karenga, talking about our need to define ourselves. And he mentioned that, defining ourselves includes being rooted in our history. If we don't study and know our history and culture, then we can't really be rooted in that. And so everything that we do is designed to give the children that we work with and the adults that we work with a sense of connectedness to their own cultural and historical continuity, so that we can look at the world through African eyes instead of looking at the world through the eyes of the Europeans who have dominated the world for the last several hundred years. The second youth program that we have is for teenagers, and it's called Food and Flavor. And that program is very much like the program for the younger children, except it combines entrepreneurial skills. So they not only learn how to grow foods, but they learn how to take what they grow and process it into value-added products that they then learn how to sell. So for example, this fall at our Harvest Festival, the participants in the food and flavor program made tea out of herbs that they put in tea bags, and they sold those they sold the tea, and they all walked away from our festival with $80 in their pocket. And so for many young people, for agriculture to make sense, they have to see the economic value in it. And then the big project that we're working on, in addition to the policy work we've done, the farm that we operate, the 2 youth programs that we operate, we are building a building of new construction on the corner of Woodward and Euclid called the Detroit Food Commons. And it's a new 31,000 square foot, 2-story building that will house the Detroit People's Food Co-op, a cooperatively owned grocery store that currently has more than 1,700 member owners who have each paid or are in the process of paying $200 to be an actual owner of the business. And I'll say more about co-ops in just a minute, but this grocery store will be a full service or full product line, I should say, grocery store that will sell produce, particularly locally grown produce, grown by folks right in Detroit. And we are, of course, prioritizing Black growers in the city of Detroit, but we'll also buy from growers within about 100-mile radius of us. But we'll also sell other products that are healthy and nutrient dense because we're concerned about the health of our community. The store will also sell meat and fish for those who consume those things. I personally don't. I'm not knocking those who do. I'm vegan, and that served me well, but some people feel that they need additional protein in their diets, and so we will be selling meat and fish, but again, high quality without the kind of preservatives that diminish our health. We'll also have baked goods, we'll have groceries, we'll have health items, vitamins and supplements and what have you, and almost anything else that you can think of that you can buy in a grocery store. But of course, the things that we're selling will be geared towards promoting optimal health. The co-op model we think is important. And let me back up and say that Detroit is, sometimes we say, the Blackest city in North America. And what we mean by that is that Detroit is approximately 80% African American. It has the largest percentage of Black people of any city in any major city in the United States. So while it's true, for example, that there are more Black people in Brooklyn than there are in Detroit, Black people in Brooklyn are a smaller percentage of the overall population. They don't approach 80% of the population. And so even though Detroit is the Blackest city in North America, there is not one grocery store that is owned by Black people. And so every time we go to buy food, we are taking money out of our community. In fact, I like to use the word extraction. What is happening actually is wealth is being extracted from our community every time that we buy food, and that wealth is being deposited in other communities. In the case of Detroit, the vast majority of the food stores are owned by Chaldeans. And I wanna be clear, because sometimes I get attacked when I say this. This is not an attack on Chaldeans. This is an attack on an extractive economy and on exploitation. Not all Chaldean store owners are terrible. Some are terrible, frankly. Some of the people who work in the stores are terrible. Not all of them are. So I just want to make that distinction. Some are striving to be better partners in the community and to treat people with respect. But far too many are not treating us with respect, are not circulating the money that we spend in those stores in our community. And so what happens is the same thing that Malcolm X described almost 60 years ago, when he said that even when we spend the money in our own community, the owner of that store takes a basket full of money when the sun goes down, and then we find their communities getting richer and richer, and our communities getting poorer and poorer. And so there are millions of dollars that leave our communities each week because of us spending money in our own community at stores that are not owned by us. Then also those of us who have cars, many of us drive outside of the city of Detroit and spend our money there. Either one is not a good scenario for the majority Black population in Detroit. And so we are seeking to counter that extractive trend, and by creating a co-op a co-op is owned by the member owners. It's not owned by a corporation. It's owned by community members who buy a share and thus have a say-so in what happens. And so using that mechanism, we're able to circulate money within inside of our community to create jobs, community-owned wealth, and empowerment instead of that wealth being extracted from our community. So in addition to the grocery store, the Detroit People's Food Co-op, on the second floor of the building, the Detroit Food Commons, will have 4 shared use kitchens that food entrepreneurs can rent out in order to do catering, in order to produce value added items that they might be doing now in their kitchen, and they need to be in a licensed environment so they can scale up and sell their things in retail stores and what have you. And so we'll have those 4 kitchens. We'll also have a 3,000 square foot community meeting space / banquet hall that can be used for things like birthday parties, wedding receptions, graduation celebrations. But also, you know, we have many lectures in our community and film screenings and musical performances. And more often than not, we find that we have to go to other ethnic groups to rent out their places when we want to have events. And again, that money leaves our community and we find ourselves less economically empowered. And so this will be an opportunity for folks to have a space that we own and control in order to hold these meetings. And it's our hope that that space will catalyze various ways of organizing our community. So I'll put a period in it right there.
Thank you, Baba Malik. I wanted to ask a question. How do we get involved with becoming a member in member owner for the co-op that is being built at this moment on Euclid and Woodward? How do we get involved?
Thank you for that question. So the easiest thing for people to do is to go to our website, the website of the Detroit People's Food Co-op, which is www.detroitpeoplesfoodcoop.org. I'm sorry, .com, excuse me. Again, that's Detroit, www.detroitpeoplesfoodcoop.com. And you can join right online. And there's 2 options. If you're a big fish, like Sister Sheila, you know, you got lots of money from braiding hair and playing music, then you can pay all in one lump sum. If you're a little fish, then you can pay in 10 installment payments. You can pay $20 a month. And so we're trying not to make the $200 fee a barrier, but we want to make it clear that people have to have some skin in the game. This is not a charity project. This is not us coming saying, oh, we're doing this for the Black community. This is us coming saying, we are organizing the Black community to do this collectively for ourselves. And so you got to have some skin in the game. And so that $200 investment is part of your skin in the game. The other part of your skin in the game is being active on one of the committees that the co-op has. And there are several committees that are doing tremendous work as we rush towards opening next October. For example, we have a store operations committee, the process of hiring the general manager for the store, and the process of determining who the distributors will be for the products that we have. We have a fundraising committee, which is raising, we still need more money to do everything that we want to do within the store. So they're raising funds. We have a membership and outreach committee that has a series of activities planned between now and opening to increase our membership and to build bonds between our member owners. So it's very important that people not just pay their $200, but they be an active participant in building the Detroit People's Food Co-op and in participating actively in the transformation of our community. Thank you again, Mama Hip, for that question.
And this really goes into the whole concept of Kuji Chagulia, which is my favorite Kwanzaa word. But just being about our business and determining for ourselves, you know, who we are and what we are. And the co-op gives us a chance. I don't know if anybody else remember the co-op we had before. It was a beautiful space and we lost that space. But one of the things about us is that we don't have to be in a space of loss when we are able to create and build our own. If everybody gets involved in this project, it can't be anything but successful.
Mhm.
Abarigani. Hi, this is Yosha speaking. Good morning, Baba. So
Peace,
good to see
peace,
you.
peace. How are you?
I'm great. God is good. I was wondering, is there levels of ownership, or is everyone on the same level of $200? In other words, are there people who go in at 10,000 or 100,000? Do they have more voting rights, more shares? Is there anything other than that one level?
No, one of the principles of a co-op is that it's democratic. And so you can only buy one share, you only get one vote. And so that's the difference in a co-op and a corporation. A corporation, if you got lots and lots of money, you can buy 1,000 shares. And if somebody else only has a little money and they can only buy one share, then the person with 1,000 shares gets 1,000 times more votes than the person with one share. A co-op is flat. There's one person, one vote. You can only buy one share. Now, if people want to donate money to the co-op, they're welcome to do that. That doesn't give them any other influence or any additional votes. And so part of what we're doing by building this co-op is also restoring our ability to govern ourselves. Because particularly in Detroit, we've had emergency managers imposed on us, and it kind of rocks us to sleep, and we get used to other people deciding for us. The essence of Kujichagulia, or self-determination, is making decisions for ourselves that are in our own, as Karenga said, image and interest. And so the democratic structure of a co-op allows us to learn again how to make decisions with our fellow community residents. And there's no hierarchy in that. There's, again, one person, one vote. We do have a board of directors. Clearly 1,700 people, or we expect to have 2,000 by the time we open the doors. 2,000 people clearly can't get into a room and make every decision that needs to be made about a co-op. So you have to have some representative body that is making the day-to-day decisions on behalf of that larger group. But the board of directors is elected by the co-op members. In fact, let me be more clear. We have 9 board members on the Detroit People's Food Co-op board. 3 of those 9 are appointed by the organization I lead, the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, who started the co-op. We appoint 3 of the 9 members for a limited period of time to make sure that the co-op doesn't experience mission drift, to make sure that it remains committed to serving the Black community, that it remains committed to Black leadership, and that the basic principles remain intact. So for the first board term, DBCFSN appoints 3. For the second term, we appoint 2. For the third term, we appoint 1. Then after that, we don't appoint anyone else. And by that time, the co-op should be firm enough in its values and principles that we don't need to worry about it drifting off course. The other 6 members of the board are elected by the member owners of the Detroit People's Food Co-op. And so those representatives are, your voice on the board who are making the day-to-day decisions. But I'll say this, in the pre-opening period, leading up to opening, a lot of decisions are made at the committee level by the member owners. So again, if you are interested in really transforming our community and moving beyond the kind of rhetorical transformation that we often hear about, we hear lots of people talking about transforming the community. If you want to be involved in something that is actually doing that, we would encourage you to become a member owner of the Detroit People's Food Co-op. And again, you can do that at www.detroitpeoplesfoodcoop.com.
That link is also in our
chat. That up. Thank you. It's very important that we know what you just gave us. We have the whole meat of the animal. It's a beautiful thing, and I fully support you, Baba, and you will get my $200.
All right, Mama Yoshi, it's such a pleasure to hear from you.
Nice. Oh, I'm sorry. Come on. Happy
Sister,
Tuesday.
happy Tuesday.
I'm sorry. Was somebody? I'm sorry. Am I going out of turn? I didn't quite
It's
look and see if
okay. Mama
anybody
Sheila,
else.
Queen Aduni had her hand raised. That was
Okay.
all. So
Got it.
Yeah, Bubba, I wanted to know about, what the sister was asking about, if you wanted to give more than the membership. So membership is, just one time. It's not an annual thing, right? And so if a person wanted to give 10,000, as a donation, but that donation cannot be written off, correct? Because are you nonprofit? How are you structured in that way?
Well, so because the co-op can potentially make a profit, and if in years it does make a profit, those profits can be distributed among the member owners. It doesn't go into any individual's pocket. Or the board could decide, well, we need to put the profit back into the store, or we need to take it and donate it to another nonprofit community organization. But because it can potentially make a profit, it can't be a federal 501c3 nonprofit. But so if you donate directly to the Detroit People's Food Co-op, you don't get a tax write-off for that. But because of this relationship that the co-op has with the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, which is a federal 501c3 nonprofit and works hand in hand with the co-op, people can make a donation to Detroit Black Community Food Security Network and earmark that donation for the Detroit People's Food Co-op, and we can kind of let that money flow through so that it supports the co-op. But we want to be clear, because I hear a lot of people say to me, well, what if I want to invest, $50,000? And what we want to be clear about is this is not an investment opportunity in the sense that most people think about investment.
Yeah.
The purpose of this is not really to make money, although, we have to be profitable to stay in business, but that's not the purpose of it. The purpose is to serve our community. And so this is not an investment opportunity in the usual sense where people think, well, if I put in $50,000, I'm going to get my $50,000 back plus some return on my investment. That's not what this is. So if people want to gift money to the co-op and because they support the principles and values, we certainly accept that. And at some point, we're going to do a member owner loan campaign where we'll ask the members of the co-op who are able to loan money to the co-op, which will then be paid back according to whatever terms we draft with each person who loans money. But as a rule, it's $200. You're a member owner. If you want to make a donation, you can, but it's not really an investment opportunity in the traditional sense of that word.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
thank you, Bob. Are we able to make payments if you wanted to? Do they have payments available to help? Or?
Yep. So as I mentioned earlier, remember when I was talking about the big fish and I said, if you're a big fish like Sheila, you can pay the whole thing in one whop, right? But if you're a little fish, if you're a minnow out here or perch or whatever, and you need to make payments, you can do that. And so that's what I did, for example. I paid $20 a month for 10 months, and then I had my $200 paid. We also have scholarships. Let me say that too. That we have some scholarships for people who live in a mile radius of where the co-op will be located on Woodward and Euclid. If you are a low income person within that radius, instead of paying $200, we have a scholarship fund where some people have donated money where we can pay $100 on your behalf, but you still have to put that $100 in. And so again, part of the principle of this is you got to have some skin in the game. And also everybody has to come in at the same level. So everybody's coming in at the $200 level, but those who get the scholarship, half of that $200 is being put in on their behalf because of donors. So there's that opportunity too. So we don't want the money to be a barrier, but we also want to be clear that this is a cooperative venture and you got to put some on the table. You got to bring some skin to the game.
So not only the skin of financial skin, but working in, being involved with the some of the committees as well.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just, and this is a self-determination project. And this is designed to model for our community how we can work together to build things for our collective advancement. And so it's not just, you know, that we bake a cake and you come and the cake is finished and you come get a slice and eat it. No, you have to help bake the cake. Nobody's coming to save us. Nobody's doing this for us. This is something we're doing collectively for our own collective benefit. So yes, it's more, skin in the game is more than just putting your money in. It's also being actively involved in creating the ideas that drive the co-op and creating the policies and the procedures that will allow it to operate smoothly and have longevity.
Awesome. I want to ask one more question about the kitchen. And so can a person come in and prepare meat in the same kitchen that they are preparing only vegan food, you know?
To tell you the truth, we haven't finalized all of the procedures for the kitchen, but we're conscious of, you know, for example, some people are kosher, and we're conscious of that we have to have some, you know, some ways to delineate the various things that people might be cooking. And there's several other policies that we're coming up with, procedures rather, for the use of the kitchen. So we haven't finalized that, to be truthful with you.
Yeah, because I know some people don't want vegans don't want their food cooked on something where meat was, you know, where there was blood and such like that. So maybe like one kitchen that I don't know. I know you said you're still working that out.
Yeah, for the most part, people using the kitchen, though, they're bringing their own pots and pans. So, you know, maybe meat might have been cooked on the stove, but you're not cooking in the pot that somebody else used. So, you know, we're providing the big equipment and the skillets and pots and pans and things like that individual entrepreneurs have to supply.
Got it. Yeah.
Queen, I wanted to acknowledge that our other team member, Mama Raziya, is here, and I want to say good grand rising to her and welcome her to the call.
Thank you. Grand rising.
Absolutely.
Mama Raziya been out here doing it for a long time. I first met her in 1975, and she has been so consistent in promoting healthy eating and ways to prepare our foods that promote life instead of death. So big ups, much respect, Mama Raziya.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad to be here. I'm not feeling my best this morning. So after getting a call from somebody who says, Mama Raziya, can I help you get on the call? I'll walk you through it. I felt it was shaming. So I got myself up out of bed and, you know, here for this segment. But I wanted to say to all of you, the co-op movement, the movement here in Metro Detroit has been just a godsend for many of us. When I moved here in '71, I was so pleased to be able to go and volunteer at the Cass Food Co-op down there on Temple. And I was able to have my whole family go in and work our day. You know, we had 4 hours that we had to work, and my children grew up having some acquaintance with co-ops. And even today in Atlanta, they look for places where they can be involved in the food getting it. It's a little bit harder in the area, but I'd like to say that I'm wondering if there is going to be a chance for people to come and volunteer so many hours and be put on the books and really expected, because it caused those of us back in the day to really be responsible and know that if we didn't show up, somebody didn't eat. You know, it was really very, very important. It wasn't just a sidekick or something fun to do, but I think that what I'm hearing, Malik, is that people are going to really feel that they're important and that it's not something to be taken lightly.
Yes, Mama Raziya, thank you. And I also was a member of the Cass Corridor Food Co-op. And you know, as we started working on the Detroit People's Food Co-op, one of the first things that we did is we met with the general managers of several co-ops, both in the state of Michigan and also throughout the country, to kind of understand how co-ops had evolved since the 70s when I became familiar with them. And really, in the 70s, frankly, most co-ops were storefronts where you could go in and there was a barrel where you could get brown rice, and maybe that was the only place you could get tofu, barrels you could get honey out of. And so that's the model that many of us grew up with. But you know, this is another time period and another dynamic. So for example, at that time, there was no Whole Foods. There was no Trader Joe's. There was no place else you could go if you wanted to get brown rice, for the most part, other than the co-op. And so it's a much more competitive environment now. The consciousness of people in America has changed somewhat about healthy eating. And so there's a greater demand for organic food. In fact, organic foods are the largest growing sector within the food industry. There's a larger demand for a whole nutrient dense foods now than there was in the 1970s. And we have a much more competitive environment. If you go to almost any commercial grocery store, if you go to Kroger, which there aren't any in Detroit, but there are some outside of Detroit. If you go to a Kroger, they have a section, for example, where they have, you know, what they call health foods, and you can get oat milk, and you can get plant-based cheese, and you can get all kinds of things that used to be the exclusive, you know, kind of lane of co-ops. And so we have to adjust to the time period that we're living in. And so there's a few adjustments that we made. As we talked to general managers throughout the country, we found that this model that many co-ops in the 70s employed of requiring member owners to work at the co-op didn't seem to be viable. And I'll give you a specific example. I spoke to the general manager of one of the largest co-ops in the country in Brooklyn, and the name of it is escaping me, forgive me. It'll come back to me in just a minute, but one of the largest co-op, the Park Slope Co-op in Brooklyn. And they have something like 17,000 member owners. And what I was told is that this requirement to have people come in and work X number of hours per month, in a sense, created more problems than it solved, because you had people who weren't really well-trained coming in, doing jobs and trying to find jobs for that many people to do. And often people wouldn't do the job correctly. Then a paid staff member would have to come back and do it again. And so we decided not to go with that model. And in fact, in the co-op community, generally, that model is kind of fading out. The other thing that used to be done regularly, including at the Cass Quarter Food Co-op, that we decided not to do, and is kind of considered to be a best practice now in the co-op community generally, is that we don't pay, you don't get a discount at the register. So for example, if you were a member of the Cass Quarter Food Co-op, you had a membership card or a number, when your total was rang up, you got a discount right there at the register. The prevailing wisdom in the co-op community now is that it makes more sense to wait until the end of the year, close the books out and see if the store was profitable before you do some kind of profit sharing. And so we have tried to adopt what seems to be the best practices in the current time period that we're living in, given the competitive environment that we're operating within.
Right.
Profit sharing sounds good.
I was looking for Lily B, but I think she's dropped off. So did anybody else have a concern or comment or something they wanted to share with Baba or ask Baba?
Danielle Claxton is in the house. What's up, sis? Peace, peace.
Well,
I have two questions. One is
Say in the Bowie house, we got all kind of dope people on the call today. I'm sorry, Prima, go ahead.
what's happening on the second floor, and how will you compete with Whole Foods and Trader Joe's?
So on the second floor, again, we have 4 kitchens, shared use kitchens that will be rented out to food entrepreneurs, a 3,000 square foot community meeting space. In fact, the kitchens are called the Kuji Chagulia kitchens. And maybe it's this is the Chagulia. And the hall is called the Imani Hall. named after our esteemed elder and Queen Mother, Mama Imani Humphrey, who was a pillar in the African-centered community. So we want to keep that legacy alive. In fact, Mama Imani was part of the Alexander Crummell Center, which Mama Raziya was a part of when I first met her in 1975. And so Mama Raziya also, as I recall, is one of the founding members of the Alexander Crummell Affirmative School, which was the first
Yes.
African-centered school in Detroit, which in a sense birthed the African-centered school movement in the city of Detroit. So we just want to give that shout out. But those are and then also the offices of the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network are moving onto the second floor of the building. And what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
What kind of plans are there going to be for competing with Whole Foods and Trader Joe's?
Okay, thank you. So the first thing that we're doing, so clearly we can't buy things in the same quantity that a national corporation like Whole Foods can buy. And, you know, so very difficult to compete just on the price point, frankly. And so we'll do as much as we can, you know, and in the planning stages, we're trying to be smart business people. You know, how do you keep costs controlled? How do you manage the amount of labor that it requires to run the store? Because the margins in the grocery business are very thin, and mistakes can like eliminate that margin so that you end up operating at a loss. So it's very hard to compete just on price point. But what we can compete on is customer service. We can compete on product line and making sure that the product line that we sell is culturally representative of the store. For example, in the co-op, there will be a prepared food section. And so we are now in the process of working with a few Detroit chefs to prepare meals that will be sold in the prepared food section that are reflective of the culture and the history of Detroit's majority population. But also, one of the selling points of this is that this is a community upliftment project. So it's our hope that people will support this because of the values and because of the larger community good that it does, not just the price point. And again, it's very difficult to compete with large multinational corporations who can buy things in tremendous quantities. It's very hard to compete with their price point. So there's these other things that co-ops offer, this sense of belonging, a sense of being able to make decisions collectively, and the overall mission of advancing our community are the things that we can really promote and that people should see as value in a co-op as opposed to a Trader Joe's or a Whole Foods.
Bob, I just want to add, as well as being member and owners. That is a very key part. And it is, you know, think of the Kuji Chagulia self-determination. Whole Foods don't have that. Whole Foods isn't even what Whole Foods used to be. Now the Amazon has got this whole different energy in there. So it's not about a competition. It's about, like he said, ownership, participation, and the skin in the game. Mama Evelyn, you were next, I believe.
Yes, I just want to know, will delivery service be a part of the co-op?
You know, we've had a lot of discussion about that. And so again, so we have a real dilemma because, as I mentioned, the margins in the grocery business are very small. Grocery stores make their money on quantity. You don't make a lot of money on any one product. So you got to sell a lot of products where you get a little money on, and that's how stores are profitable. And so every layer that we add, you know, delivery and things like that, that requires more money and it cuts into that margin. And so, but we also know that that's a real need, especially for many elders in our community. And so what we've been looking at, frankly, is there are third parties, like you might see if you go in Meijer, you might see people that have on t-shirts that say shipped. And what they're doing is they're in there shopping for people, and then they do the delivery. So we haven't finalized this decision yet, but in the discussions we've been in, it looks like we're leaning towards having one of those third party companies be able to do that shopping and the delivery so that we can meet that service, as opposed to us doing it directly and taxing our already thin margins.
Right, good job. Or, you know, the other option is, again, Coogee Chagwalia. We might have a group of brothers or sisters that might want to do those services and provide those services. Again, but if they put forth the effort, that can be something. I mean, think about it. That could be an option. Mama Raziya?
I'd like to put a shout out for a couple of things. I remember Operation Get Down. When I was working with that co-op, we had what we called a vegetable bag and a fruit bag. And it really was popular. People loved the idea of getting the vegetables that most households want or need, you know, lettuce, maybe tomato, onions, apples were in the fruit bag, but people were like, I think we were getting $5 bags or $8 bags, but they enjoyed being able to just have the shopping done by someone and said, I know I need potatoes, I know I need onions, I know I need celery, I know I need, and they paid a certain amount. It was less than what they would pay if they were shopping or doing these things individually. And that might be a fun thing, but the thing that attracts me to any market is a market that I can count on. Like, I love okra. I love fresh okra. I will travel and be dedicated to that market every week because I know I can count on them for fresh okra. I know I can count on them for turnip greens with bottoms, good looking sweet potatoes. And if the co-op decided to have 5 or 6 items that we always had in stock, people would come for those items and they would shop for the rest of the items while they're there. Okra will get me to one store and I'll do my shopping there because I know they have beautiful, fresh okra. So I would vote for our being able to be identified that we always have certain items.
Mama Raziya, and also thank you for lifting up that history. And I also remember that co-op that Operation Get Down ran, and they had hundreds and hundreds of bags. In fact, there were multiple centers throughout the city that that co-op operated at. And you could go to that center, order your bag, and it would be there on Saturdays. And I remember them shopping at Easter Market and dividing up everything. And to some extent, the Million Man alumni under Paul Taylor's leadership has continued that tradition. Usually once a month or so, they're doing those bags. So again, thank you for lifting it up. And yes, we plan to have a robust produce section with as much of the produce being grown locally by Black farmers as possible. But of course, we won't be able to source all of the produce from local Black farmers, and so we'll have to use other sources as well. But we expect the produce department to be a premier produce department, and that people come from far and wide to get this fresh, locally grown, nutrient-dense produce, including okra and sweet potatoes.
That's awesome. And grown in love. Love grown food. It's so much better. Danielle, you had a question?
Okay, hi. So I just want to know one of the things that the competitors have is pretty much ever since the pandemic, you know, and things shut down and people weren't getting out as much to grocery shop. They started doing the shopper where I can send my list, have somebody shop for me, have my stuff there to just go ahead, pick it up, drop it off at the car. Or they also use the delivery systems like a DoorDash and an Instacart for somebody else to go shop and have it delivered. Will the co-op be able to have those resources available for people's, you know, maybe seniors at home who can't get out, or even people who just busy work from home, can't get to the co-op but still want to support? Will there be a system like that available for people like that?
I think my dear sister Danielle must have went offline for a second, off camera for a second when I was answering that question a couple minutes ago. And I'll just say briefly that yes, we do plan. We've been discussing that. We know there's a need for especially for seniors who might have trouble getting out. There's a need for delivery services. But because of the cost of us doing it internally, we're leaning towards one of those third-party services, like you mentioned, that would actually be the one to go out and shop on people's behalf. So we're still finalizing that. And I would encourage those who are interested in those kinds of things happening to become a member of the Detroit People's Food Co-op and get on the operations committee, which is the committee responsible for making that decision.
I'm
The links
sorry,
are
my
provided in the
client son was talking to me, so yeah, I did dip out for a second.
Ain't
But yeah,
no thing. It's good to see you, though. Very good to see you.
good to see you too.
Okay, you all, the links are provided in the chat window if you needed to check out the page and either be the big fish or the the minnow. Get started and begin that map. Baba, there was also, I want to bring up the movie that we were in about it was called The Economics of Happiness, and how one of the stories in there was speaking about the children who lived in Tibet, I guess, and they lived on the farm, and the children, when they would go to school, they would get teased and aggravated about them just being farmers' children, you know, and they didn't see the value of who they were and what they meant to their communities. And so, you know, then there's a food shortage and everybody's looking at what happened to our farms. You know, you're not paying attention because you don't value that. That movie was global. I had no idea it was going to be as large as it was, but it's called The Economics of Happiness. And it's a very good film to watch. But something that really blew my mind was that I was riding down Jefferson the other day, and I thought about how they closed the market where the seniors were. And then when this new village becomes built, they get them a market up and running and fabulous and beautiful right there on Jefferson and 75. That blew my mind, that they robbed the market from the seniors that was right in their area to build a new village and then provide them a brand new, funky, fresh, you know, Meyer type, whole food type space. And that just really, it bothered me when I actually saw that. Yeah, yes, it can be done, but that's why we need places like our co-op for us to have, where it is in our community where we can get to it easily or have access to, or have friends, neighbors, what have you, to be able to help shop and help get people food and help them get what they need. But it's just amazing to me. I wonder how far in advance that had been put. They probably had that plan put in place when they built the little village. You know which one I'm talking about over there on off the river over there. I forgot what it's called.
You know, one of the things, you know, in the Black community, we tend to think about what's happening tomorrow and next week. And meanwhile, the people who are in power in this society they have 50-year plans, 100-year plans. So many of the things that we're seeing rolled out right now were conceptualized decades ago. And, you know, we're seeing those plans roll out now. So if people of African descent are to be successful and competitive in the world, we also have to begin to do long-range planning and not just think about what's happening tomorrow and next week and the year after, next. And that requires we have a certain stick-to-itiveness. You know, we've kind of almost been trained in this society, people in general in American society have been trained that everything's supposed to happen quick, instant. You know, you put something in a pot and, you know, boil it for 2 minutes, it's ready. Or you watch a newscast and, you know, they have little short sound bites because people can't pay attention more than 30 seconds or so. And so we're kind of used to that. Everything's supposed to happen quick, 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 quick. But the reality, by the way, I'm just seeing this, our website has been redesigned. So I'm seeing it for the first time. Since Mama Oya did this redesign.
All
right, Mama Oya.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
But, you know, this kind of work is protracted work. The work of Black liberation is protracted work. In fact, John Oliver Killens, the great writers, said that we need long distance runners. You know, what tends to happen in the Black community, there's some incident, let's say the police kill a person, kill a Black person, and we go out to the streets, which we should, But you know, we'll go out and we'll protest 2, 3 weeks, 4, 5, 6 weeks, and then inevitably it peters out and it's business as usual with the system. This business of institution building, or this work of building institutions for the liberation of Black people, is not 6-week work. It's work that we have to think about intergenerationally. That not only is it, for example, we've been working on this project, the Detroit People's Food Co-op, since 2010. We've been working on it now for 12 years. Every day for 12 years, working on the same thing to make this come into being. And so we have to have that kind of stick-to-itiveness and the ability to pass things on intergenerationally if we are to be successful and compete in the world with people who have 50-year plans, 100-year plans, many of which involve our being diminished in some way.
I'm looking at this, all the pictures, and there's a lot of youth shown. I'm wondering if our co-op has a thought of youth. I see the food warriors here. Will there be a place for youth to work in the co-op, you know, as assistants to the staff, or having a real position where they can see things daily and be able to take steps to just step right into some of the jobs that will be needing them in the future. Right now, I see that we have a lot of unpreparedness, you know, where youth have been put in the position of looking on and not actually participating. So they're not ready to take leadership roles when the time comes.
This is a question, Mama Raziya, we've been grappling with. One of the challenges that we have is that because the Detroit People's Food Co-op will be selling beer and wine, which, you know, some people don't think that's a good thing. You know, I'm not much of a drinker myself. And for example, I don't eat meat, but I don't think it would be a good idea for the co-op not to sell meat. And so similarly with beer and wine, although I don't personally drink much, there are people in our community that drink beer and wine, and you know, they do it in moderation, and it seems to not adversely affect their health. And so we decided to sell beer and wine. But because we're selling beer and wine, you have to be at least 21 years of age to become a member owner of the co-op, because you can't be an owner of a store that sells alcohol and not be of legal drinking age in the state of Michigan. And so, so people below 21 can't really join and be a member owner. So, but we are grappling with, given that they can't be member owners yet, how do we create a pipeline to get them ready and to get them involved in the co-op? And so I can just say there's a desire to make that happen, but we don't have what that formula looks like yet. There's hundreds of unanswered questions that still in the next year, as we're racing towards opening, there's many, many questions that still have to be answered. And this is why we invite people to join us, to become active committees, to help grapple with these many questions that have to be answered before we open the doors next October.
This is a wonderful website. A lot of good information.
And I want to give a shout out to my sister, Oya Amakisi, Mama Oya Amakisi, who's the communications director for the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. And over the last few days, she's been working on redesigning the website. And so as I mentioned, this is the first time I've seen the redesign as you're showing it. So I appreciate you sharing it.
Wow.
Now, what it says here, Baba, is okay, donation amount 50, 75, and 100. Is that separate from membership?
That's separate from the co-op. So let me be clear, because this is often a point of confusion. So I am executive director of the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We initiated the Detroit People's Food Co-op, and we appoint 3 of the 9 board members, but it is a separate entity. It has a separate, you know, federal tax ID number. It has its own board. It has its own policies. DBCFSN does not control it, although we have some influence to make sure that it stays on mission. Membership in the co-op is separate from membership in Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. You can be a member of Detroit Black Community Food Security Network and not be a member owner of the co-op. You can be a member owner of the co-op and not be a member of the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. So we want to make clear the distinction. Although they work hand in hand, they are two separate entities. So the website that we're looking at now is not for the co-op, it's for the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. And we do indeed accept gifts, and we have what we call sustaining members who have agreed to donate at least $50 per month on an ongoing basis, so that we have unrestricted funds that are not grant funds. Often, you know, when you get grant funds, you have to say, well, we're going to do A, B, and C with these funds. But maybe the need you have is D, E, and F that's not covered by A, B, and C. And so you have to use those grant funds for what they were designated for. However, when people give donations, those are what's called unrestricted funds that we can use in what area of need we have within the organization. And so the page we're on now is encouraging people to be sustaining members and to support DBCFSN with a monthly donation. But it is, again, separate from the Detroit People's Food.
Yeah, and it does say sustainer gift information, so that is the different part about that. All right. So, Bobby, you also just returned from Cameroon, am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I had the honor and the privilege of being the only so-called African American to attend Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa conference in Cameroon from November 28th through December the 1st. And so the conference was 3 days, but I was in Cameroon for 7 days. And in fact, I did a report back at the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network's meeting a couple weeks ago. And I will be doing a kind of a mini report on that tomorrow night at the Nsodoma Institute Kwanzaa program at 6 o'clock at historical King Solomon Baptist Church at 6100 14th Street. And so, in fact, I'll be doing a PowerPoint presentation that really traces some of this Black food sovereignty work going back to the work we were doing at Nsodoma Institute with the school garden and the food security curriculum through the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network to the national organization that we've created called the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. And then finally, looking at some of the international global Black food sovereignty work that we're involved in, including the recent trip that I had the honor of taking to Cameroon. It was an incredible trip. There were 170 participants at the conference from 30 different African countries. I had the honor of addressing the conference. And so in a sense, I felt the responsibility of representing Africans in the Western Hemisphere. Not only was I the only so-called African-American at the conference, but I was the only African from the Western Hemisphere, the so-called Western Hemisphere at the conference. And so
thank you for what you did.
Just trying to connect our work in this part of the world with the work of African people on the continent. It was a very rewarding experience, and some connections were made that I expect will continue to advance our collective work on both sides of the Atlantic for many years into the future.
Awesome.
Oh, wow.
That's incredible.
Great.
So can I, let me make sure I understand what you just said. You were the only, what was the name of the conference again?
It was called the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. And this is their biennial conference. Every 2 years, they have a conference in a different country in Africa. 2 years ago, well, 2 years ago it was virtual. 2 years before that, it was in Senegal. Before that, it was in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And this year, it was in Yaoundé, Cameroon.
Okay, and you were the only African American? Is that what you said, or?
And also, I was the only African from the so-called Western Hemisphere at the conference. Everyone else attending the conference was representing an African nation on the continent of Africa.
Were they African, African American or something? In other words, were they, I'm just trying to see, were they Caucasian, white or something, or and talking about but discussing us or what? I'm trying to visualize what you're saying correctly.
You know what I could actually do? I don't know if you all have time for me to show a short PowerPoint or not. I can show you some of the.
Yeah, we got 25 minutes.
Okay, if you can
Gotta give him the power. He got the power.
I'm gonna give you the power, brother, because I need to
Gotta give him the
understand.
power.
and I'm going to so my screen sharing is disabled. I need it to be
It's
enabled.
coming.
Okay,
We about to pass you the power, Baba. Just a couple seconds.
let me know.
Give you the power.
Okay, I'm co-host now, I think. So bear with me for just a minute while I pull up this this PowerPoint presentation, and I'm not going to show you the whole thing.
Okay.
But
Bob, you say you can show us better than you can tell us.
Yeah, I can show you better. Exactly.
Yeah, because I'm trying to get a visual of this. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing.
Best way for me to show you a visual is to show you visuals, and then,
Yeah.
then I'll answer the question. So while my computer is working a little slow, so it's pulling this up right now, but I'll kind of just give an introduction and say again, there were 170 people at the conference who were representing 30 different African countries. Of those 170 people, I did see 3 white people at the conference. There was a white person from Zambia. There was a white person who lives in Senegal, and there was a white person from the United States, from the U.S. Food Sovereignty Alliance. The other 167 people were African people from, again, these 30 different countries on the African continent.
Okay.
And my computers weren't working really slow. I'm sorry it's taking so long. So, you know, one of the interesting things about the conference, on the first day, they asked people to wear their traditional clothing. And so the first day you had people from Uganda wearing traditional Ugandan clothing, and the Senegalese wearing Senegalese, and the Kenyan wearing, and so it was a beautiful display. Now this created a dilemma for me as a so-called African-American. And I kind of jokingly said to people, I was unsure about whether I should wear the tattered clothing of our enslaved ancestors, or if I should wear a zoot suit, or if I should wear a hoodie and Timbs.
Right.
And so I.
What did you decide?
I decided to wear a dashiki from Ghana and.
Okay.
And some black jeans, and it seemed to work out just fine.
Good.
So
you know, one of our Insortima students made up a rap called My Dashiki. You remember that, Baba?
Of course, Brother Kalen. Yeah, in fact, Brother Kalen is still out here doing music. He calls himself Culture now.
Okay.
And he's still doing, you know, conscious music.
Yeah.
It's one of his early things, My Dashiki. Again, my computer is really slow, and so excuse it taking so long to pull this up. I'm going to keep talking while it's coming up. But I think you all can see my screen now. It's loading.
Yeah,
so
we can.
I'm going to keep talking. Another theme of the conference, though, was I eat African. And what they mean by that is that on the continent of Africa, often people think that foods and other things, foods, music, culture, coming from either Europe or the United States is superior to those indigenous things from Africa. And so one of the themes of the conference was supporting African foods, indigenous African foods. And so many of those foods were on display at the conference that are being grown in different countries in Africa. And we're finding now that many of those foods are much more nutrient dense than the kind of processed foods that people are eating that are coming from the United States or coming from various areas around the world. I'm not sure why this is not loading properly.
Do you have Facebook or Instagram or anything running in your background? I tend to close those extra windows sometimes.
I probably do.
You got 50 windows open. Yeah.
So give me just a second. I'm gonna keep talking while this is.
Oh, Bob, I also remember watching the food. I'll have to get the link. I'll put it in the WhatsApp. But there was a program on Netflix about something, whatever. Anyway, I'll think of it later. But they were talking about how rice in Benin, we think rice came from China.
Yes, there's indigenous varieties of rice that are from West Africa. In fact, there's an interesting book called Black Rice by Judith Carney. Judith Carney is a white woman who's actually from the Detroit area, who teaches at the University of California, Davis campus. And she traces how this rice from Africa was brought to the United States. And in fact, the growing of rice in the United States, the commercial growing of rice in the United States began with enslaved Africans who were brought here primarily from Sierra Leone and were brought to South Carolina and Georgia, where the so-called Gullah people are, the Geechee, so-called Geechee, or the Gullah people are located. And those enslaved Africans from Sierra Leone, what we now call Sierra Leone, taught the European plantation owners how to grow rice. And the varieties that they grew initially were these indigenous rices that were brought on slave ships from West Africa. So I think I finally have my presentation up. So I'm going to go through a couple slides real quickly. Can you all see my screen now?
We can see we've been watching the screen the whole time. I know I've been able to see it, so
okay, cool. I want to make sure. So this photo is a sister from Togo and a brother from Tanzania. This is on the first day of the conference, and they're in there.
Baba, I don't see it. I still see your
that picture. I don't see, right? I don't see a picture, but I see your screen.
You don't see like photos right now? You're not seeing that at all?
No.
We just see your screen for whatever your file is with your documents and things.
So maybe it's just catching up. It's got to catch up for us.
Yeah, I'm getting a message that says the screen sharing is paused. So I'm not sure why that is. But I'm going to.
Well, you want to come out and then go back in because now you got it up.
Yeah, let me try that.
Oh, here we go. Okay, there. Okay. Now pull it back and see what happens.
Bear with me. Bear with me.
Do, 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 do. Ta-da!
I'm coming.
Bear with me just another couple
Well,
minutes.
I'm going to say, do realize that we are entering into Mercury retrograde. So that communication thing and technology is going to be interesting. But I did want to interject and say, I learned what you recently learned, what you just mentioned about enslaved Africans cultivating rice in America from a documentary on Netflix called High Up the Hog. And
That's
High
it.
Up the Hog, girl, that's my show. And so they also said that from satellite, they could still see the rice paddies that those enslaved created in the Americas when they first got over here. They're still in existence to this day. You can view it through satellite, which I thought was so cool.
Thank you, Sister Danielle, for sharing that. And that documentary on Netflix is a must-watch documentary. Jessica Harris actually wrote a book called High on the Hog, and the documentary is based on her book, and she appears in the documentary several times. She's actually a friend of mine, and we have brought her to Detroit to speak. So can you all see my screen now and the photos?
Yes, Bob, we see your pictures. We got it.
Great. So this is the photo I was describing earlier, a sister from Togo and a brother from Tanzania on the first day of the conference. These are some of the traditional foods that people had on display. For example, in the lower right-hand corner, you see they have popped sorghum. So in the United States, sorghum is basically fed to animals. It's not consumed a lot by human beings, but it's a highly nutritious grain. The lower left-hand corner, you see they have roasted cowpeas. Cowpeas are very similar to what we call black-eyed peas or Crowder peas in the United States. And then there's, you know, various other products that people had for sale, lots of things with cocoa and fruits and nuts and things like that. I want to show you a brother I met. This brother is Nan Fak, and he's a 26-year-old from Cameroon who is the CEO of what's called Ta Ankh Farm. Ta is a word in the ancient Medu Neter or so-called hieroglyphics that means earth or land, and Ankh means life. So the operation they run is called Ta Ankh Farm. Hopefully I can get this to play. This is a short interview with him. You know, my computer is running really slow this morning, so I think I'm going to try to keep it moving, just show the photos.
Mm-hmm.
Having a hard time with this, but again, I'm going to keep talking while this is processing. So these are some more of the conference speakers, and this is in answer to Sister Sheila's question about who attended the conference. So you can look at pictures and kind of see some of the folks. This sister at the top picture was from Cameroon, and she was from the local organization that did the on-the-ground organizing, and she represents farmers in Cameroon. It's the National Organization of Farmers in Cameroon. The brother in the center picture, Brother Bernard Guri, is a farmer in northern Ghana. And then the bottom picture is one of the panels that they had. We also visited while we were there an agroecology center where they are teaching young people how to grow and how to do that and using sustainable means and what have you. And these are some of the children who perform for us. This white woman you see here, that's the white woman from the US who was representing the US Food Sovereignty Alliance. She's one of the 3 white people who were at the conference. Below her is some what's called terrace gardening, where they're growing on the side of a hill. Center lower photo is in a growing bananas and beans and cropping bananas and beans.
Everybody make sure that you are muted, please. If you've got something in the background, thank you.
So while we were at the Agroecology Center, many of the conference participants from different countries had signed up in advance to do cooking. And so they prepared fires and they were cooking traditional dishes. And so the photo on the far left is Sister Bridget Mugambe, who is from Uganda, and she had just gone out and cut some banana leaves, and they use banana leaves to cook in Uganda. They wrap things up and steam them in the banana leaves. The center photo at the top is Sister Anne Maina, who is from Kenya, and she was preparing a Kenyan dish. The photo next to them on the right is the brother and sister from Uganda. Below that, the sister's putting some rice in a pot. She's from Senegal. She's preparing Senegal's national dish called chebujin, or rice and fish. And then the center lower photo is a brother from Zimbabwe, Chef Ankara, and I'll be bringing him to Detroit sometime next spring, but he was preparing traditional dishes from Uganda. Now, I mentioned earlier that I am vegan, and I've been vegan for many, many years. I don't even know how many years. In fact, I've been vegan since I knew it was called vegan or plant-based or whatever terms people are using now. But usually when I travel in Africa, and this is my 6th trip to Africa, by the way, I usually have a very challenging time finding vegan food, because most people in West Africa are not vegan, and most dishes have either meat or fish in them. But I am so happy to say that this particular night, where we had this Pan-African feast, foods from all over the continent, I was able to have this wonderful plate of all plant-based foods, which included yams with mushroom sauce. And when we talk about yams, we're talking about African yams, not sweet potatoes, which is what we have started calling, started calling sweet potatoes yams in the US, but yams are really another plant, and Africans being brought here to the US thought it was similar to what they knew as yams in Africa, so that name kind of stuck. But I had yams with mushroom sauce, avocado, lentils, sorghum salad, yellow sweet potato, spinach, lettuce, mashed potatoes that were infused with various vegetables, including corn and spinach and some other things, and then a Zimbabwe version of the corn dish called ugali. And so that was a wonderful treat. I also mentioned to you that on the last day of the conference, I had the privilege of speaking to the entire conference and reminding them. My talk was entitled Building Black Food Sovereignty, Linking Africa and the Diaspora. And I affirmed the role that African people in the so-called Western Hemisphere have played in the creation of the idea of Pan-Africanism, that because of our historical circumstance, most of us cannot trace our lineage to a specific ethnic group in Africa. Perhaps with some of the DNA technology now, you can get a better idea, but prior to that, we didn't know if we were Fulani or Igbo, and in fact, we are a mixture, because what they would do during the enslavement process is intentionally put people on the ships who were from different ethnic groups so that they couldn't communicate well with each other and couldn't foment rebellion. And so us Africans born in the United States or in the Caribbean, we tend to identify with Africa as a whole, as opposed to with a specific ethnic group. And so we've really brought forward this idea of Pan-Africanism, and the great independence leaders like Jomo Kenyatta and Kwame Nkrumah really were influenced by Black people from the Western Hemisphere, who they met either in the case of Nkrumah when he went to Lincoln University in the United States, or Jomo Kenyatta being in London and interacting with Black people from the Caribbean. And so my message to them was that we have to think on a Pan-African level, and that African people in the United States and the so-called Western Hemisphere have to be part of any efforts to bring about food sovereignty for African people. These are some of the other folks that were attending the conference. I'm not going to go through the picture and explain who every person was, but we have people in this photo from Kenya, from Togo, from Uganda, from Cameroon, from Ethiopia, from where else? From Nigeria. And so there are, it was just a wonderful experience. The best connection I made, though, I think, was with this brother here, who's an Ethiopian, who happens to live in the United States. So he is actually the communications director for the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa, but he lives in Dallas. And so the connection with him was really important, because he's going to be key in linking the work of Black food sovereignty in the United States with the work that is being done on the African continent. And then I'll end up by saying that after the conference was over, I had 4 days that I was able to kind of hang out in them streets in Yaoundé. And so these are some of the pictures of my hanging out. The picture where I'm standing on top of a mountain, that's called Mount Febe, and it's overlooking the city of Yaoundé, the capital city of Uganda. And although I may look brave and strong in that picture, I was actually shaking like a leaf. Trying not to show it to my Cameroonian host, so they wouldn't think, who is this scared boy from the US? I'm a flatlander, so when I'm up on high places with no barriers, I have to say I'm not feeling real comfortable.
Yeah.
Earth gang, Capricorn.
Baba, I had a question.
Yes.
What were the general challenges for African countries regarding food sovereignty? What were the challenges?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is coming right from the United States, and that's the project, the AGRA project, headed by Bill Gates, who is they're importing genetically modified seeds into Africa. And that's a huge problem, because genetically modified seeds often cross-pollinate with traditional seeds, and in a sense ruin those seeds. Wow. And so there's a big fight going on in Africa. In fact, while we were at the conference, Kenya passed a law banning GMOs. And so that's a landmark decision. And we're hoping that it will inspire others in Ghana who are fighting GMOs. They're in the courts now, an organization called Food Sovereignty Ghana. and other groups throughout the continent are fighting against GMOs. And so that's one of the biggest challenges that exist, but also there's the challenge of land grabbing, wealthy people from European countries and Arab countries buying up huge tracts of land in Africa to grow food. There's the challenge of food being kind of dumped into Africa from the so-called Western world, and people having this idea that it's from the United States is better, or if it's from Europe, it's better. There's the challenge of often Africa being seen only as a source for raw materials. For example, cocoa is produced in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, but it's usually shipped to Europe so that they produce the chocolate, and then the chocolate costs more than what people in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire can afford to buy. And so Europe being, Africa being a source of raw materials is another ongoing problem. And so there's several challenges that have to be overcome, but both on this side of the water and the other side of the water, we are able to meet those challenges if we work together and think creatively, and most important, if we understand our own divinity. You know, part of what has been done to African people is to separate us from our oneness with God, if you want to use that term, our understanding that God, or the Almighty Creator, is inside of us, and that we have the ability to shape reality in the same way that other people do if we align ourselves with our divinity. And with that, I'll call it a wrap.
Well, thank you for that.
That's Kuji Chagulia.
Hey, yes, yes.
The theft of the land and the food, and even again addressing that movie, Economics of Happiness, they talk about how food is grown in one place, but because another place wants to take it, like the Aki, what else? The noni. Remember, the noni juice was a big thing. They're stealing it, and I'm gonna say stealing. They're stealing it from the land where it comes from, the original place where it comes from, to bring it to us. Just like with the same thing with the bark. The Palo Santo, they're killing the trees to bring us Palo Santo to burn, you know. And Bill Gates and his self, you know, him and that seed sounds like something else I know, but I'm not gonna go there right now. But Bill Gates he has over, I think they said close to 300,000 acres of land here in the US. And when I did the research looking at that, a lot of his land is along the Mississippi. And now they're saying that this sucker's dried up. I would not doubt if that man is not damming and rerouting that water. Because that man, he's something. I don't even think
something different. Yeah.
Yes.
He has something else. But he has over 300,000 acres of land. And then they interviewed a farmer from, it was a British guy interviewing a farmer from a southern state. And you know, they think this man is going to be some country bumpkin because he's just a farmer. The interviewer was so dumbfounded, he couldn't comprehend what the farmer was saying. And he said, maybe we'll have you on again so you can explain all this. And I'll look up this app. I'll make sure that I post this interview. But it's something. We have no idea what's going on out here. And then somebody else is saying that a lot of Chinese people are buying up our land. And the same people that are running, you know, the, what do you call it? The FDA, I'm not sure. But the Monsanto family, who, you know, your pesticide folks also were part of that, you know, selling seeds. And when your farm uses the seeds, then the earth is not usable again. It'll rip up and tear up the earth. You know, these are the kind of people that are in power, that I don't know how they got there. I didn't vote for the mofos. I don't know how they get in there, but these are the things that are happening that we can't control, but we can have our own, you know, practicing the art of Kuji Chagulia, determining for yourself. So I'm sorry, I got a little winded because this is pissing me off, because it's not only happening in the food business, it's happening in the health industry and also water and food. You know, it's ridiculous. Just ridiculous.
Thank you, Mama Het.
Well, thank you so much, Baba Malik. You have enlightened me. I am definitely going to join and get my share And I'm really big on event planning, so I want to help in the fundraising and getting the word out definitely. And just want to let you all know that if you want the chat, if you go at the bottom of the chat, I think it's the 3 letters. Let me see. Yeah, the 3 dots. You can download it and you can save it on your computer if you want to get all this, because there's a whole lot of links and stuff. So you can do that. And tomorrow, oh, and you can hear the whole thing on the archives if you go to, let me see, ElizabethVisionaryConference.org and hit the archives, hit the button. Anyway, it'll lead you right over to the archives so you can hear this whole conversation again. And tomorrow is Mama Het. You want to share what you're bringing to the table tomorrow?
I am bringing JIMA, which is collective work and responsibility, and Baba Haru will be presenting about how he used that Nguzu Saba for the community here over at the Ewell Circle Village. So we'll be sharing that tomorrow. Yes.
Thursday is Reverend Ruth is going to join us, and Friday is Reverend Shahira. Am I saying her name right?
Shahira. Yes.
So, yeah. So join us Monday through Friday, same time, 8 to 10 every week. Thank you for coming. Baba, you want to give us some last words, or let me honor Mama Raziya.
Well, I'm just really grateful that we had this opportunity to hear the exciting activity that's going on right here in Detroit, and to have Baba Malik Yakini decide that his spirit decided to land here. We're just so grateful because he has brought so much to us. And we look forward to a very successful venture with the food security efforts here. And I'm inspired to get on the phone and call more people to listen to what we heard today.
Yeah.
And join up. We should have thousands and thousands involved in this effort. Thank you.
Jacqueline, you want to say anything in closing? This is the Tuesday team.
This is a Tuesday team. I listened to the whole thing. I've been having to be busy today, unfortunately. However, it came to me that acronym, Detroit Food Network, what is it, DF? I can't think of the acronym, but I went and looked at my email and I'm a member. It's like, I'm like, hey. So while we were on, I also went in and I joined the support co-op. So I'm gonna be a part owner, praises to the Most High. So I'm also planning that my sister, she's into, taking the scraps and what brother shared about.
Composting.
She brought me a composter that's sitting in my garage. And then what he was sharing about having the tent where you can start early. So I will be connecting so I can learn that, because I need to get that composter out as soon as the snow starts thawing and get that heat so we can start doing something. So thank you for today. Praises to everybody. And I really appreciate it and enjoyed the discussion today.
Thank you. Deitra?
That's an example of Kuji Chagulia and getting your skin in the game, okay?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Baba Malik. I mean, this has been great just to hear what you're sharing. and your adventure over in Africa too. That was very nice to hear about, because, you know, I felt like I was there, you know, it's like I felt a part of it. So thank you so much. And what you're doing with the co-op, I mean, you got a group of people helping you, thank goodness. But I want to join in too, you know, because I know Mama Raziya, she was at the forefront of joining, and she would always talk about it. So I'm gonna join up too, but thank you for sharing today.
And because of the time, Mama Head, I want to thank you for stepping in where needed. That's what the Elizabeths are about.
Yes.
And so I'm obviously, I want to give you time to say something. And Juanita, we're going to go right on out right after her. We're going to give Baba Malik the last say.
Okay.
I'm complete.
Ashe. Baba Malik?
Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity to share. I first want to give praise to my elders. I want to lift up Mama Raziya, particularly because she's been doing this tremendous work for many decades to encourage us to eat better and to understand the relationship between our food and our health. But there are many other elders who have come from the city of Detroit, many of whom are now ancestors upon whose shoulders I stand. And so I just want to say that if there's any good work that I'm doing, it's because I've had good teachers and good examples. And then finally, I'll say that it's important that we connect with our own divinity, however you might conceptualize that we know that we have the power to shape our own reality, and that we be about the business of doing it, not just talking about it, but that we do it, that we have concrete things that we're building and developing that make our lives better. This is the value in studying our ancestors, not just to study, you know, oh, in ancient Kemet, they built this and they did that. You know, I mean, it's important to know those things, but it's important to know that so that we can be inspired to do those things now, not to live in the past, but to take those lessons from the past and use it now to get Black people out of this terrible condition that we're in, where not only are other people feeding us, but other people are determining how we look at ourselves, how we look at the world, and how we move through the world in a way that makes us more dependent upon them. So it's on us to change that paradigm. We have the ability to do it. We have the power to do it. Let's get busy.
Ashe.
Yes, Ashe.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, well, we know what to do. We want to hug ourselves. And in that hug, we want to include Deitra and her family. Her father-in-law left Earth yesterday. So we want to keep her in our hugs and stuff, and hug the world, the world, and sprinkle love and joy and peace and
But you gotta hug yourself. Baba Malik, you gotta hug yourself.
yeah, everybody, whether you see it or not, you gotta hug yourself and hug the world and sprinkle love and peace.
Woo-hoo.
And
All
all
right, y'all. Ashe.
Ashe.
Peace.
Peace and love.